Welcome to All Pro Football Data. My name is Jim Coburn, and today's episode, we're talking about Isaac Guerendo, running back out of Louisville. So we're going to be looking at him in terms of his overall data profile to kind of project him. Guerendo played at Wisconsin from 2019 to 2022 before transferring to Louisville in 2023. And the biggest questions we're going to be trying to answer today is, first of all, where do you put him in this draft class? Second of all, how athletic was he really? Because he did test really well at the combine, which is one of the reasons why I'm doing this video. And three, kind of where should you draft him? Like, what is his ultimate potential at the NFL level? These are the questions that we're asking. These are the questions that data can somewhat answer. So first off, taking a look at his offensive market share data. How I get these numbers, you can kind of pause the video right here. But Guerendo, production-wise, was not really there at all. 20 percentile in terms of total offensive market share, 40 percentile in terms of his receiving market share, and then his touchdown market share was in the 30 percentile in that particular metric. These numbers are not that great for him as a prospect. They really aren't. Most starters average in the 70 percentile to 80 percentile in terms of most of their metrics, and that's just for starters. So he was not that productive of a player. Now, moving to his efficiency scores, this is where I'm going to take a look at how efficient he was when the ball was in his hand. So, despite the fact that he wasn't very productive, was he efficient? And taking a look at those numbers, he was. His touch AV, which is the average yards per touch, were in the 70 percentile. His receiving average was in the high 60 percentile, and then his touchdown percentage was also in the 60 percentile. So he was fairly efficient with the football in his hands. He wasn't elite efficient, but he definitely was efficient in terms of those areas. Moving on to his athleticism traits. This is the biggest thing that really pops off in his profile, guys, based on data. He was 90 percentile in terms of explosiveness, 90 percentile in terms of speed, and then in the 90 percentile also in terms of flexibility testing. And matter of fact, he was 99 percentile in terms of speed, and then 98 percentile in terms of explosiveness. And what that means essentially, guys, for those that don't really know what percentile scores are, is that out of every single running back, he was in the top 98 percentile, meaning that he was pretty much better than 98% of all the running backs that have ever been to the combine or had a pro day since the 1999 NFL draft class in terms of his scoring. That's pretty impressive. You're talking about a 1%. There's only been 1% of running backs that have come through that have really outperformed him in that area. So he is definitely a one-of-one type athlete, which is why we're talking about him. Now, in terms of his context production, this is where things get a little scary. So context production looks at his production, which already wasn't that great, but then also looks at his age, his level of competition, and also the team that he was on. How good of a team was he on? These are questions that answers. And based on his context production, he was not that great. 8 percentile in terms of his age, 45 percentile in terms of his MSA rating, and then 49 percentile in terms of his pass rating. The average area for starters is usually in the 70 percentile in terms of their pass in MSA, 87 percentile for Pro Bowl players, and then 94 in terms of All-Pro players. So he is very athletic, but his production wasn't really that great. Coming to some comparisons for him, these are all the running backs that tested very similar to Isaac Guerendo based on his production traits. You got guys like Chris Carson, Dexter Williams, David Sims, Damian Harris, Cameron Harris, just a bunch of backups. That's basically what you're looking at here. So not that great of a list to be on, to be honest. Despite the fact he is very athletic, he just wasn't very productive. Moving on to the outlook for him. Isaac Guerendo profiles as a backup to spot starter long term. He is the most athletic running back in this draft class based on data, but he did not produce like an elite running back in college. I believe that he will be overdrafted due to these athleticism traits, especially when it comes to fantasy owners, because you will have fantasy football people that will draft a player who is really athletic and just assume it's just he's going to put it all together at the NFL level. That's never the case, guys. So again, I do think there are some positives here. I do think he's worth taking a flyer on him, if you will, but not a guy that I would really ever have on my. It depends on where he goes. It depends on the situation he ends up in. But I don't think I would really own any shares of him if you're a fantasy football guy. And I don't think if I had an NFL team, I don't think I would have a roster spot for him. Even on the practice squad, I don't necessarily think I would have a spot for him on that particular area, just because there's other backs that have been much more productive. So he is one of one athletically, but he's not one of one in terms of his production. And production is definitely much more important in a lot of ways than just pure athleticism. With all that stuff out of the way, thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Jim Coburn. Like, comment, and subscribe if you can. Please let me know how you feel about him as a prospect. In terms of Isaac, do you love him? Do you not like him? What are your thoughts on him in the combine? Also, check out my X account called Gymmetrics, Jimetrics. Also, check out my Patreon page, patreon.com/jcoburn. And I'll see you guys in the next episode.